653, 1320 WILS. Major developments happening in this case between Apple and the U.S. government. Today, Apple is saying that it will oppose and challenge a federal court order to help the FBI unlock an iPhone that was used by one of the two attackers who killed 14 people in San Bernardino. Let's talk about the way Apple's approaching this and if it's correct. Chris Copeland joins us, director of the Institute for Homeland Security, Cybercrime, and International Criminal Justice Studies at Tarleton State University down in Texas. Chris, great to have you here.
No, thanks for having me.
So the Timothy Cook, the CEO of Apple, says this court order is an unprecedented step by the federal government. He says, quote, "We oppose this order, which has implications far beyond the legal case at hand." First of all, what do you think about Apple fighting this desire of the government to get into this one phone?
Well, I think, I'm kind of torn. On the one hand, I think, Apple has some sort of moral obligation to assist in this, and not that they haven't been. Apple's been quite complacent in terms of helping the government out on this case. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, I think Apple probably has a pretty good argument for the slippery slope issue that, if we set up a bypass for this system, what's to stop that precedence from being set for the next version of a phone, be it the iPhone 6 or 6S or 7?
Let me ask you, when there's a crime committed, is it not typical for Google or Comcast or any company to assist federal authorities to solve a case or to help out?
So they are when they're asked to. If they're given a subpoena or they're given a warrant, that's what's required by our legal system for a company to assist law enforcement.
In this case, though, is that not a court order for Apple to unlock this phone for the FBI?
So, yeah, originally there was no search warrant because the phone was handled by the government. It was a government phone, so it was handed over to the FBI without any issue. The issue here isn't seizure. The issue is, and it's not even really the case. The issue is basically that the FBI has asked Apple not to just bypass the security, but to create software which bypasses its own security. Mm-hmm. So creating a version of the iOS that doesn't have the 10-time limit. If you type your key code in 10 times, your phone will automatically erase. Yeah. That's what they want stripped out of the operating system for this one phone.
So they can basically run as many passwords as they need to get into it.
Exactly. So they can do it as many times as they need to until they can. It's called a brute force method, but until they can get it open.
It's incredible. You're saying with all the knowledge of the FBI, there's no way to bypass, even without brute force, to actually bypass the entire password process to get in?
So in previous versions of the iPhone, it was possible. The iPhone 5, 5C, and 5S had pretty good encryption, mm-hmm. and they had pretty good standards. So, no, it's not easy to bypass it, which I think is what most people have found amazing about this entire process, is that the FBI and its criminal forensics labs couldn't get into it.
Yeah. So what's the slippery slope, though? Because if Apple basically, they'd have to make changes to the software on this one phone to allow unlimited password attempts, is that it?
No, they would make changes. They would make a whole new version of the operating system and then apply it to that phone.
To this phone? So you can actually load that operating system without unlocking the phone, you're saying?
Yes, you could load the operating system without unlocking the phone, mm-hmm. Keeping all of its data. And the slippery slope is Apple says, well, if you're going to make me do it for this phone, what's to stop the government then from in the future saying, well, now I want you to do it for the 6S or the 7 or the 8 or however many versions of the iPhone there are.
It would be used just for singular phones, though. Is that not correct?
Well, control that, though. How do you keep that from being leaked? Mm-hmm. How do you keep that version of the operating system from being sent out to the internet? I love the FBI very, very much. I like the people there. They're good people. They work very hard, and they do a really good job of keeping our country safe, and they do an excellent job of prosecuting criminals. Mm-hmm. But they don't have the greatest standard. I mean, they were hacked 2 weeks ago, and 20,000 of their employee informations were released to the public interwebs. Mm-hmm. So do I trust that you can keep the Pandora's box closed? No, I don't trust Apple to keep that Pandora's box closed, and I don't trust the federal government to keep it closed.
Apple users, is this the kind of thing where you think that they're supporting Apple in a case like this?
That's a good question. I don't know that there's been any polling on it. My suggestion has been to, walk into this discussion with an open mind. Mm-hmm. But consumers like their products, and they don't like people messing with their products. Mm-hmm. So Apple has a good argument that this could erode the trust between the consumer and the company. And of course, that would damage the company, damage its products, damage its reputation. So I think they have a good argument there.
What do you think happens now then? So, I mean, could Apple be forced to create and install this type of software onto this one phone, the phone that was owned by Syed Farouk, one of the shooters in San Bernardino?
So the motion that was filed yesterday actually does that. It actually requests Apple. They have 5 days to respond to it. So today being one of those 5 days. So it actually does compel them to do this. It compels them to write this software and do it. Mm-hmm. Apple's next course of action is either comply with that order or challenge it legally through an appeals process, through amicus briefs and briefs that are filed on behalf of the court. It will be a legal battle, and it will be a battle decided in the courts.
Yeah, you think it'll take years potentially before this is resolved?
I don't know. That'll be a good question. I sincerely hope not, because encryption is only going to get stronger, and we're only going to see more use of it. Mm-hmm. This question really needs to be answered. A solution needs to be found sooner rather than later.
But tell me, Chris, where is the line? Because ultimately, let's say this was a case that was unfolding. Let's say there were lives potentially at risk right now. And the solution was that the answers might be in a phone. At what point does a company like Apple just doesn't really need to help?
So, that's a great question. I think any company would be willing to help in so much as they have the ability to. Right now, Apple doesn't have this software. It has to create it.
Is that hard to do, though?
It's not technically infeasible. Whether or not there's a burden that they have to prove, whether it's an undue burden on the company to create said software, and that's probably where Apple will challenge this. The motion lays out a pretty good argument that it's not an undue burden given the amount of updates Apple pushes out. So I don't know that Apple has a very good legal leg to stand on there, but that's one of the ways that they could attack this compel order.
Yeah, but I guess when you look at their role in society and protecting people, it's trying to save people if they're in danger. At what point do you think companies like Apple should, in fact, allow this kind of access, especially if lives are at risk?
So, personally speaking, I think companies should have a moral obligation to assist law enforcement as much as possible in any case. But I'm biased. I'm a criminal justice researcher, I'm a technology researcher, and I'm pro-law enforcement. Mm-hmm. Where do you draw the line? I think you draw the line at what is technically capable. Yeah. Right now, it may be a burden for Apple to do this. In 5 years, it may not be a burden for Apple to do this. So that line that you want to draw will shift over time, and I think it will get easier and easier as time progresses.
Just curious, if the government were to go outside of Apple and try to get one of the country's best programmers or a group of them to alter the software outside of Apple doing it, is that even feasible in any way?
I don't believe it's all that feasible. Apple's technology is proprietary. Mm-hmm. Their engineer, unless it's a former Apple engineer, at which point Apple has a pretty good reputation for making people sign trade secret agreements and non-disclosure agreements even after working for Apple. Mm. Should the government hire somebody to sort of backwards engineer, which is, of course, a whole new can of worms, Apple would have a pretty good legal case under a non-disclosure or a violation of copyright and patent law.
Interesting. So it looks like Apple actually might be stronger than our federal government in a case like this. Is that right?
Apple has a pretty good argument for taking this and challenging it.
Incredible. Chris Copeland, director of the Institute for Homeland Security, Cybercrime, and the International Criminal Justice Studies at Tarleton State University. Chris, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep, and that is it for us. I'm Michael Cohen, and Producer Mike Peterson joins us too. And we are wrapping it up here. By the way, if you try to listen to us and signal's not as clear as you'd like, check us out online. Just log into our website. You can hear it crystal clear at 1320wils.com. Check us out there. Also, if you missed any portions of the interviews, and maybe you caught a quarter of it, you want to hear the rest, go to the website, 1320wils.com. Click on the media tab. You'll see Capital City Recap there, and you can hear the interviews in full, posted soon after the show. We're back tomorrow at 6 p.m. Have a good night. Bye-bye.